Hello and welcome to Keep Right On, a Birmingham City podcast brought to you from us here at Birmingham Live. I'm Brian Dick and I'm joined as ever by my colleague and co-host Alex Dicken, fresh from the back of a much needed 1-0 victory in the Championship over Swansea at the weekend. We'll have Alex's reflections on that match, and you guys have again kindly given us your takes and questions, many of which cover the issues and the topics that we want to discuss anyway. So Alex, how are you doing? You enjoy the weekend?
Yeah, good, thank you. When you say 1-0 against Swansea, you expect it to be like a kind of back to the wall job, Blues just need a win, get over the line, but it was kind of a really, really good Championship game, probably the best Championship game Blues have been involved in, I think, so far since they came back up, and thankfully they came out on the right side, so that improved the weekend.
Yeah, it was two good sides, wasn't it, going toe to toe?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Swansea probably edged the first half for me. They had the ball in the net and through Vipotnik, the guy we spoke about with Tom Coleman beforehand. Probably a bit harsh. It didn't look offside from the replay I saw. I've not seen many other angles. They had a couple of other chances, but Blues also had chances. Marvin Ducksch created one for himself with a lovely touch inside the box. And it was just a kind of end-to-end contest. There was space for both teams. Second half, as we kind of expected, Swansea tired a little bit, having gone, for 97 minutes with Nottingham Forest on Wednesday, and Blues managed to take advantage through the subs largely. Chris Davies brought 5 players on. 3 of them came on in the 67th, and an extra one for a concussion sub in the 80th, and 2 more in the 87th, and those two, Tommy Doyle and Lyndon Dykes, had a really big impact, especially Dykes, who scored the winning goal. Really, really, really good header, created by Patrick Roberts, who'd come on a little bit earlier. So you can see why managers are so reluctant to call them subs now, and they keep using the term finishers, don't they? Because they did finish Swansea off.
Yeah, they absolutely did. Before we go in depth on the subs, the starting lineup contained what I think most people would say would be quite a big surprise, with Jack Robinson coming in for Phil Neumann. You weren't massively surprised by that, though, were you?
No, I was. We had a lot of questions and takes last week about Clara playing on the wrong side, and it has not in Clara's own defensive performances, but it has been an issue in terms of playing out, hasn't it? And it's affected Cochrane, I think, because Cochrane had a lot of his own issues at Stoke the previous week, and he didn't need Clara giving him the ball at every opportunity under pressure. So, and that was what he was having to do because he couldn't play out with his left foot because Clara is not left-footed. Having the left-footed option of Robinson really, really helped. And not just that, the experience, the biggest compliment you can pay him was that Clara and Cochrane probably produced 2 of their best performances of the season alongside him. And there were no mistakes or lapses. It just looked a really solid defensive performance.
Chris Wilder will have absolutely looked at Jack Robinson playing for Blues enviously, won't he, as he tries to make something of whatever Sheffield United have become. And Robinson spoke well post-match, I think, didn't he, as well?
Yeah, he did. Had a few minutes with him outside the press room, and just talking about Championship generally more than anything, because he's been in this league for a good chunk of his career, has had 3 seasons with Sheffield United in this league. 1 ended in promotion, 2 ended in playoff campaigns. Obviously, they lost the last playoff campaign to Sunderland at Wembley. So he's been there and done it. And he did say that, Blues have got what it takes in that dressing room to mount a push for promotion. And he seemed quite confident about that. Obviously, a group of the players that kind of came to Blues late in the window, Robinson, Roberts, also a little earlier on Doyle, have all kind of had recent Championship promotions, so that experience now is there as well.
Yeah, indeed. The other eye-catching selection was Marvin Ducksch. Can we go as far as saying we've started to see the German internationals, integration for real into the side now? Are we looking at him as a solution and potentially a long-term solution and a steady selection now in what we've talked ad nauseum about, being troublesome positions, either 10 or up front or Raumdeuter, or however you want to describe what Deutsch is.
However you want to describe it, Brian. I was quite surprised that Ducksch was predominantly the striker. He played further ahead than Stansfield when they were in their usual 4-2-3-1 shape. A lot of the time in Blues pressed, it became a 4-4-2, so Stansfield was right up alongside Ducksch, but he was mostly the most forward player. he had some really, really good moments. You know, I mentioned the chance inside the box that he created for himself, really from a Clara cross that was coming to nothing. There were some good touches. He's a bit awkward to play against by the looks of it as well. You know, with his frame, he got the better of the Swansea centre backs, particularly Burgess, a few times. Had some good link play with Demarai Gray, obviously with Stansfield. So I quite liked it. He always tries to do something. Whenever the ball comes to him, he wants to do something. He doesn't want to just, knock it back to the guy who's giving him the ball. He wants to do something. He wants to progress Blues and get them further up the pitch. And that's probably why he's got so many goal involvements. He's always looking to do something. Not all of it came off. We said that a few times about him already in his short Blues career. But it was positive that he wanted to do something. Whether that means he is the striker for Blues moving forward, I'm not too sure. I think Kyogo will have something to say about that. And again, we'll come on to him because he made an impact off the bench.
Yeah, indeed. I think a lot of the times when Blues got on top in the second half, you did see Ducksch and Stansfield in the box together when their crosses coming in, weren't you? And then even towards, when they both went off and it was Kyogo and Dykes, there was two strikers, for want of a better word, or forwards in the box for the crosses, weren't they? So, it did seem to look a little bit more balanced in that way, and more likely to produce results, other than there just being one smaller bodied guy up against three centre halves, which again we've talked about quite a lot. So, yeah, interesting. What did you make of Kyogo?
Probably more of what we've seen from him. We know that he sets the press. He's fantastic at that. His movement's absolutely superb. He's constantly on the move, giving midfield players and the other forwards options to find him. Patrick Roberts found him, not that long after he'd come on the field, one-on-one, and then kind of we saw the other side of Kyogo, which we have been seeing this season, that he kind of snatched at the chance, and it was just a poor finish. He just didn't strike the ball well at all, and Vigouroux was allowed to make a save that he probably shouldn't have been given a chance to make. So that was frustrating. He had another one where the ball broke to him and he's tried an audacious overhead kick and it would have gone in had it not been for Ben Cabango getting his body in the way. But, until the finish, it's really good. Yeah. And then he gets the finish. But that's the problem, because that's what Blues have paid the money for. That's what they're expecting. They're expecting goals from Kyogo. And I think he's expecting goals from himself. Remember his first interview after he signed, he was asked kind of, what he's going to bring to the party, and he just said goals. And so far we haven't seen it, and we do need to see that because everything else is on point.
It's difficult to be massively critical when his excellent movement and his pace and his vision and his awareness of how to escape defenders have got him into these really good positions. And then, as you say, it literally is just the finishing touch. Promising, I think, from an attacking point of view. Obviously, all the chat was going into the game was about how do you turn possession into chances? What are the best combinations at 10 and 9 and out wide? It was a productive match from that point of view. We saw a few more answers, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think the numbers were, 23 shots, 7 on target. A few of those very good chances. The one Ducksch created for himself. There was one for Kumas at the start of the second half where Stansfield fizzed it across, and I just don't think Kumas expected it to get to him, and the anticipation wasn't quite there, and he headed wide. Demarai Gray, a little bit later on, wriggled through two players and probably should have scored when he got there. The Kyogo chance we mentioned, obviously Dykes' chance. So you've got 4 or 5 good chances there to score. So that's a big improvement on what we've seen in the previous games.
I'm not even going to ask you what the XG was, because we're not talking to XG anymore, are we?
No, we're not. Can't do any more XG, Brian.
No, indeed. Roberts on the bench. There's more to that than meets the eye. It wasn't just guys left on the bench, was it not?
Yeah, Davies did say afterwards that they had players have different training weeks, and he did allude to a potential knock that Patrick Roberts had in the week that might have kind of influenced his thinking. So maybe Roberts would have started when he came on. He was superb. I know Davis really likes Lewis Kumas, and we've not obviously seen the end product from Kumas yet, but what we have seen from him is a willingness to run and take players on, and a willingness to press. He's one of the best attacking pressers Blues have got, really kind of almost in the mould of a Stansfield in the way that he harasses and harries defenders. So that was really good from him. Again, just the end product was missing when he got into the final third, and beat Josh Key, who I think is a very decent Championship fullback. So he's proved he can do one part, and now he obviously just needs to do the rest.
Yeah, indeed. I want to throw some comments that Chris Davis has made at you. Davis said, we're going to have adverse games, months and weeks. I hope they're not months. And it's about staying calm and fixed on what works well for us. That was important this week because we went back to who we are, what we could do, and what's worked so well for us. He said, I had no concerns because even in the games we've lost, we've been more than good enough from one box to the other. It's been the decisive moments in each that cost us. What are your thoughts about him saying that and what he's getting at, maybe?
Yeah, that was in response to a question about whether he was relieved to get the victory, because it felt like it's the final whistle. There was definitely a bit of relief around St Andrews. Not the usual, when you win a 1-0 Championship game, it's just kind of expected of Blues these days, but as it would have been against Oxford. But there was a little bit of relief because there has been tension over the last few weeks. You don't want to get on a kind of losing run early in the season, do you? And Davis has clearly felt the pressure a little bit because he was answering a lot of questions about how Blues intend to score goals, basically, in his 2 or 3 press conferences before the Swansea match. So I think in that press conference, he did talk about, we don't want to. Yes, we want to score more goals. Yes, we want to work on creating more things, but we don't want to have that completely dominate our thoughts. We don't want to just become just about that, because then you forget some of the things that you are good at, and Blues are very good at keeping the ball out the net, aren't they? And again, it was a clean sheet that provided them with the platform to go and win this game against Swansea. They were very, very solid defensively from probably 25, 30 minutes in, when Swansea's attacks started to calm down a little bit. And then they got the goal in the end just by, I'm going to say, pounding the rock, because that's the phrase they use. And eventually, through relentless pressure, Swansea did crumble. And it showed the strength of the subs, the strength of the squad, that it was 2 subs who came on to combine for it.
Yeah, the Patrick Roberts, he's known for his quality, isn't he, and his ability to impact games in the final third. And, he made it look relatively easy, but, he picked up the ball on the right. Wasn't a huge amount on, but very quickly he'd worked himself half a yard of space. And then he had the technical ability and quality to put the ball into a very dangerous area. And we said before we came on here that Lyndon Dykes still had a lot of work to do with that header. Dykes is becoming something of a talisman, isn't he? It's 4 points and a Wembley appearance from Lyndon Dykes in his last few goals, isn't it? So obviously the draw became a win at Blackburn. The draw became a win at home to Swansea, and obviously no one will ever forget the header against Bradford in the Virtue Trophy semi-final. Do you think Lyndon Dykes is part of the conversation for starting matches?
I mean, the man averages a goal every 13 Championship minutes this season, so he probably should be, shouldn't he? But I don't know.
He's plan B, isn't he? Basically,
he's almost been pigeonholed as a substitute now, I think. And it's quite well documented that Blues were, I suppose, willing to let him leave towards the end of the transfer window, weren't they? And it didn't happen for whatever reason. So, he's almost out the door, but then again, he can still, as Chris Davis made it clear, play a role between now and January. He's kind of got this role where he is the guy who comes off the bench, as you say, Brian, plan B. When they put crosses into the box and can be direct, Dykes can be that striker. He is more so, Ducksch has got a similar frame, hasn't he? But more so than Ducksch. Ducksch doesn't really, doesn't strike me as someone who's going to tower above defenders and bury headers, whereas Dykes can. He's shown that he can for Blues, particularly with that goal, the goal against Bradford. He scored a header against Wrexham, although I'm still not giving him that goal. So he got that in his locker. Rather than at times last season, you'd speak to Lyndon Dykes and he'd kind of say how he likes playing as the second striker off Jay Stansfield or off an Alfie May. And you don't really want him to be a number 10.
No.
Blues have got enough number 10s. Although that was a conversation last week, they've got enough number 10s. You need Dykes to be the 9, the big guy, the big physical guy who, when the ball comes into the box, he attacks it much similar to what Lukas Djukovic would have done, 3 or 4 years ago. So they've not really replaced Djukovic, and I'm not saying they need to replace Djukovic and find that guy, but they need someone like Dykes who can attack the ball.
It did feel like a plan B paying off, though, didn't it? When just with the nature of that goal, you talk to him, you listen to him say, "No, I'd like to be a creative number 10," and then you go, "Of course you would, lad. Now go and play up front for a bit." So yeah, credit. I think you're right. I think he is part of Plan B, but a really effective part of Plan B. So yeah, we'll see where that story goes, because it's a goals talk, don't they? Ultimately. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, if Dykes keeps scoring from the bench, it can only go on so long. If Kyogo doesn't score as a starter, if Ducksch doesn't score as a starter, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, hang on, the Stansfield Dykes combination at times last season worked very well.
So can Dykes be part of Plan A?
I don't see why he couldn't be. He was last season, wasn't he? And that team, the team last season wasn't terrible, was it? It broke records. It obviously smashed League One. I don't see why Dykes couldn't be part of Plan A. He's been a championship striker before. He scored goals in the championship. Why couldn't he do it again? He's not 35. He's 29.
Yeah, interesting. It would be a surprise to see Davis go that way, but if he gets an idea in his head, he will follow through with those ideas. Jack Robinson, as we mentioned earlier, spoke post-match as well. He said some really interesting things, not least it's easily a top 6 squad. It's down to us, the players, to prove that. If it's a tough ask when the international breaks stop in November, that's when the season can get quite hard and you need to be consistent. As there speaks a man who knows all about the championship. And he goes on to say, be good away from home and nice and solid at home. This squad has got more than enough to go up this season. Toe in the party line, or what do you make of those?
Probably a bit of both. I mean, every single player that joined talked about promotion, didn't they? And Robinson, no different. The difference with him is that he's had multiple seasons where he's been in the mix for promotion or has got promoted. So you kind of take what he says as almost gospel, don't you? And he did also say, in another part of the interview I did with him, he said about there won't be a Leeds and Burnley this year. There are probably 8 or 9 teams who have their eyes on promotion, who can go and get promoted, and obviously believes that Blues can be one of them. I look at the squad and, there's a lot of quality there, isn't there? We're still waiting for it. There's a couple of unknowns still. Ducksch, Kyogo. We don't know quite how well they're going to perform, how many goals they're going to score. How can Chris Davies get the best out of Tommy Doyle on a more consistent basis? There are still a few ifs, but some maybes. But I think the bulk of the players there, it's a good squad. A lot of it is already from last season. They've added some good players, experienced players, Robinson, Patrick Roberts, players that we know can do very well at this level, Damari Gray. So, yeah, I agree with what he says. It's just whether it all comes together. There are going to be 12 teams that start the season. Sheffield United, for example, would have probably gone into this season thinking we've got, Gus Harmer, we've got Tyrese Campbell, we've got some very, very good players at this level. And yet they are bottom after 6 games without a win. So
yeah, I've just been listening to an interview done by Derby County captain Lewis Travis, who's just gone from Blackburn to Derby, one of many players to follow the John Eustace route. And they lost at home to Preston at the weekend. And even in that interview, he's talking about we're better than Preston and we've got the squad to finish in the top 6 or challenge for the playoffs. So you're right. Everyone thinks it, don't they? No one's really out of it yet. Even Chris Wilder was answering a question when he in his introductory press conference last week about the playoffs, and he didn't dismiss it, did he? And we've seen Nottingham Forest go from dead men to Premier League, haven't we? So absolutely, it's still massively wide open.
You know that Sheffield United, even though they've lost all 6 games so far, they're going to come, don't you? They've got such quality there. They've got probably arguably the best player in the league. They are going to come eventually. So,
indeed, let's move on to some of your takes, and in complete counterbalance to what we've been talking about going into the top 6, and Jack Robinson said, challenge for promotion. Dave J has said, after recent results, I think us fans need to keep our expectations in check and realise we'll never replicate last season. Every game will be more competitive. We could be joint second if not for the Ipswich penalty, and I'm sure we'll get better. Just hope that Kyogo starts to finish. Expectations, I mean, the genie's out of the bottle with expectations, isn't it, really? Because Tom Wagner's talked about it and Chris Davis has made no secret about it. And as you said, every player that's spoken when they signed has talked about promotion.
Yeah,
I think you can't get the expectation toothpaste back in the tube anymore, I don't think.
Yeah, I think poor Chris Davis is the only one who hasn't mentioned the P word, to be fair. I think
Is he not? Right.
No, I think he is the only one who's not.
He uses the word ambition, though, as a substitute for promotion, doesn't he?
He does. I think we obviously all know that Chris Davies is probably, very much on board with what everyone else is thinking, but he's the guy who's got to manage it, isn't he? So he's the only one who hasn't kind of jumped on it so far. But yeah, the expectation is obviously going to be promotion, or at least a challenge promotion. I think we both, my feeling at the start of this season is that Blues can be a team that challenges for playoffs. I'm not sure they're going to have enough over a season to be top two. I'm not quite convinced of that yet. But then again, as I mentioned, the variables earlier, how good are Ducksch and Kyogo are going to be, how many goals they're going to score, that could catapult them into that conversation, couldn't it, over the season? So at the moment, I have them as a playoff contender. And there obviously are a lot of other teams. I think, what we've learned so far in the first 6 league games of this season is that Blues aren't going to win them all, as they did last season, mostly. So there are going to be games where they go to Stoke and lose 1-0. Coventry away this weekend's a very, very hard game. They haven't lost yet in the league. So it's probably just not to kind of look at batches of games and see how well Blues do over them rather than to look at games in isolation, I think.
Yeah, the Coventry game, Frank Lampard got really quite upset at the way Norwich approached their trip to the CBS Arena a couple of weeks ago. They were sort of time wasting in the first half and all the players were going down. And, I think that speaks to the fact that Coventry have put 7 past QPR, didn't they, a couple of weeks prior. So you are right, the Coventry game is going to be an extremely difficult game, albeit their trip to Leicester, I don't know if you saw it, but it wasn't massively different to the way Blues went to Leicester. And, it was a tight game. And as we've spoken before about Blues ending up on the wrong side of 2 pieces of quality, that quality didn't come for either side. I think what Dave, we can absolutely say that Dave J is right, is that last season won't be replicated this season. GP BCFC says, just wondering what your thoughts are on this. I really think we need to start playing with a proper 9. We missed Stansfield on Saturday because he was coming into midfield or out wide to collect the ball. And then we were a man short on turnovers. Just think we need someone up there. It's kind of what I was talking about having bodies in the box, isn't it? That take.
Yeah, I think so. And to be honest, I still, having watched Ducksch as the 9, I still feel it's probably going to work better if Blues can get Stansfield back into that position or get Kyogo into that position, just because they've got the legs to go in behind.
Do you think that Ducksch isn't a better option as the furthest most forward?
I think in some games he will be, when you want someone who's going to be able to hold the ball a little bit more, and he'll be able to use his size. But I do feel that when Blues are at home, I do like the idea of a Stansfield or a Kyogo that are more of a threat in behind. I think we're probably going to see all sorts of combinations. We're probably going to see 3 or 4, potentially, if we include Dyke's players, play as the furthest forward striker at points this season over the next few months. But I do still, Stansfield is still top for me. When I look at it all, I think he offers the most rounded solution.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, there's only been 3 home games in the league so far, so it's difficult to say what teams are doing against Blues at home. The Oxford match was very similar to the League One, where they sat deep. Seemed to be a little bit of space in behind Swansea, a little bit more than there would have been against a League One side last season. Fair to say?
Yeah, they just came and played Blues toe-to-toe, didn't they? I actually thought Blues could have done better in behind Burgess first half. I thought Burgess was the centre-back or the defender that was showing a little bit of weakness. I think there was a couple of touches that were loose, and he wasn't the fastest when he turned around. So I felt they could have probably exposed that a little bit more. They did more second half. But yeah, Swansea came to play. They were a really open, good team, I think. And they might have done more had they're not tired second half. So I think that'll go down as a very good victory for Blues, I think.
Yeah, indeed. And I think you're probably right. It does go to the point where you'll probably take it on a game-by-game basis as to what type of striker is going to thrive in what type of space the upcoming opponent is going to leave at St Andrews. So, yeah, thank you very much for that, GP. Devon Gaz said Clara looked much more comfortable at right centre-back. Robinson did well, and Cochrane appreciated the left footer next to him. Still unsure whether I would rather have Laird or Samuel. Look better with Ducksch and Jay together, although I would have liked Jay to be closer to him. So that point kind of goes to what GP said about Jay being a little bit further back from Ducksch. But what is irrefutable is the fact that Clara and Cochrane looked much happier bunnies, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, Clara especially, watching him pirouette on the ball, on the halfway line, just turning around from his man. And he wouldn't have done that at all when he was on the other side. He had all the answers straight away on this side. He knows the patterns, knows the movements, knows the passes that he's got to make, the spaces that he's got to move into. We saw him advance to kind of that, area in the inside right of the Swansea penalty area where he can put crosses in that we saw a lot last season. He got a few assists from that area. He found Ducksch with one cross from there. He just looked like he knew the position, was very comfortable in the position, had been playing it all his life, and Blues reaped the rewards from that. And Robinson looked very comfortable the other side. Cochrane, I think I've mentioned it, but he looked just far more assured with that kind of left footer next to him, because Robinson didn't have to play the ball to Cochrane every single time to get himself out of trouble. He could, whip his own left foot around it and get it forward rather than rely on Cochrane to do it for him. So the balance was just much better. I feel sorry for Phil Neumann a little bit, but I think it's more of a question of balance rather than actual, who's better defensively in this case.
Yeah, indeed. Paul has asked, do you think that's that for the Clara Neumann partnership for a while?
I think so. I don't see Robinson getting chucked out of the team straight away after a clean sheet and a victory. I think Robinson will have the shirt now. Neumann, I feel sorry for him because he didn't do an awful lot wrong. The biggest thing that he did wrong really was move Clara's position when Neumann himself could have played as the left-sided centre-back because he played there a little bit for his previous club, Hanover. But we've mentioned a million times that it was done to kind of, negate Clara's weakness against pace in wide areas. And what I will add is that Inusa did get one-on-one with Clara a couple of times because obviously he was in those areas, the right-sided centre-back, and he went by him a couple of times. Yeah. So it's obviously an issue. He went by him and Clara got booked, and he went by him completely in the second half because Clara couldn't do anything. He couldn't bring him down, and probably should have done better with the end ball. But that's an issue, and I think that's probably something the right back, whether it's Samuel or Laird, is going to have to kind of sort out. I don't think it's necessarily the end of the Neumann Clara partnership. I think Phil Neumann will probably get more chances this season. Because he can. Then again, they are the positions that are most difficult to change, aren't they? And also, Aaron Cashin hasn't had a shot yet either, has he? Bless him. So yeah, I don't know. I think we'll see Neumann again, but now he's out the team. It's really on Robinson to make a mistake, isn't it?
And what I would say is we've seen Davis be really ruthless. He's preferred a settled defensive partnership in the way that he did with Ben Davis last season and Clara. And unfortunately, Christian Bielik was just left hanging, wasn't he? I don't know if this will develop into, Clara Robinson will become what Clara Davis were. But yeah, as you say, Chris Davis does like a settled partnership back there. So be interesting to see how that evolves. Callum's asked, do you think it's time to drop Iwata? I think Doyle deserves a start next to Peck. He says his Iwata's look slow and not at the races. A player of Doyle's quality on the bench needs to be utilised, in my opinion. Doyle did come on, didn't he? Was it for Peck? It was, wasn't it?
For Peck, yeah.
Yeah, towards the end of this game. Thoughts about the combination there? I mean, I think that I'd like to see Doyle not deployed as a 10, but deployed as a 6 if he's going to get in the side. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, we're going to have to see him at some stage, aren't we? I actually thought Doyle came on, even though it was in the 87th minute, and normally players hate getting brought on at that sort of time, but he came on with a real point to prove. I think he had 3 or 4 shots, one that went just wide, that everyone in Tilton thought was in. and he made a real impact. There are a couple of crosses in there as well. I think one cross might have been the one that the goalkeeper parried in the way to Kyogo for that overhead kick as well. So, yeah, I was quite impressed with Doyle and his impact in such a short space of time. I think he needs a chance at some stage. The problem is, as we mentioned on the last podcast, is that will Chris Davies ever break up that partnership of Iwata and Peck? It has been such a kind of solid platform. And when Chris Davies talks about not overreacting to things, a couple of bad performances or defeats, he probably, has those two in mind as well, that we're not overreacting to things. We're not breaking up that partnership, which has served us so well for 12 months, because it's, why would you? You can't overreact to things. So Doyle, I think, needs a chance. For me, he's probably more of a replacement for Peck than Iwata. I don't think Blues have got the like for like with Iwata. And yes, I will say Iwata was quite poor on the ball at times against Swansea. I thought he could have done much better in possession, and there have been other games like that this season. But physicality, he's unmatched in that midfield as far as Blues are concerned. So, if you look at that Swansea midfield, they had Stamanic at the base of it. They had Galbraith there as well. Stamanic is a big physical presence. You need someone like Iwata in there to combat that. And they haven't got that without him. So I just don't see Iwata being taken out by Chris Davies, I'll be honest on that one. I don't really see Peck being taken out either, because for me, Peck's the...
Go on.
Peck is the most talented Blues midfield player. So I don't think he is going to be taken out, the most naturally gifted all-rounder. I still don't see where Doyle starts.
There's got to be some flexibility when Peck's been away with South Korea, though, that Doyle gets a game, surely.
You've got to rotate, haven't you? You've got to rotate. I don't know whether you can rotate all three because of Iwata again, as I said before, but I think those two, you could rotate Peck's position. Could Peck play number 10 sometimes? Could they both play as eights? Can different things happen? Does it always have to be one or the other? I think Doyle has to play some of those games. As you mentioned, maybe not even after the international break, maybe before the international break when, Peck's going away for 2 weeks. Blues results before international breaks are way worse than they are when they come back.
Yeah.
So why not change those two around before Peck goes away? I do think the rotation needs to be looked at there.
Yeah, I agree. Anthony Wagstaff is asking a question that, again, this is a podcast in its own and we've devoted a huge amount of time, but he says, do you think we need to look at the forward line consisting of, and Anthony gives us a preferred forward line, so Gray, Kyogo, Stano with Deutsch or Dykes. So Gray, Kyogo and Stano in the three, and then Ducksch or Dykes up front. He says he feel we could get more out of Kyogo and Stano with the big man up top as a different outlet, with Roberts and Kumas adding something off the bench. So I'm going to go around in circles talking about which players should play in the attacking four. You go first. I've got a couple of. I think Gray and Roberts are nailed on as the wide players.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go around in circles talking about the 9, 10, Raumdeuter, whatever.
I think the rotation has to happen with the others, doesn't it? I think even to an extent, I think Lewis Kumas will be rotated for Roberts and Gray at points this season, but I do think those two look perfect for those two positions, right and left. Then you're
agreeing with me on Roberts and Gray, are you?
Yeah. Then you've got a 10, which I think Stansfield has looked the most competent 10 Blues have got this season so far. And then you've got Kyogo, whose best football has actually come when he's played in front of Stansfield as the 9. And he's obviously had Roberts there as well, so Roberts can play those through balls. I thought I could see that being an avenue to goal for Blues. And then Ducksch has to have a mobile striker around him. It can't be Ducksch and Dykes, can it? It's got to be Ducksch plus Stansfield.
No, I think Anthony was saying it was Ducksch or Dykes as the one. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but then you're moving Stansfield wide, aren't you, in that formation with Gray, with Kyogo, and
that makes me grumble when Stansfield's wide as well.
I don't dislike Stansfield on the left, but I don't like him on the left in the way that Blues play the left winger. I think he's wasted there. He needs to be in central areas where he can get shots off and cause problems. And the left winger in Blues system usually stays wide left, don't they?
Yes. I don't know what to do with this. Gray and Roberts as the wings. I think having got Ducksch into the side, I think he needs to run the starts now. Is that as the 10 or the 9? I like Kyogo. I think Blues are better and they're more dangerous with Kyogo in the side. But then if I'm just saying to you that I want Ducksch to have a run of starts and I like Kyogo in the side, that means Stansfield's not playing.
Yeah, Chris Davies actually said that he always feels that Blues are going to score when Kyogo's on the pitch. That he feels like chances will come. So, and I agree. Through maybe sometimes he'll get himself into the positions, but also through the way that he charges goalkeepers and defenders down as well. So I feel the same, and I feel like you said Ducksch needs a run of games. I think Kyogo also needs a run of games in a settled Blues team. At the start of the season, they were still chopping and changing a little bit, weren't they? He played in front of Stansfield for the first 2 or 3 games that he played in front of Kumas. And then obviously, he was on the bench the last 2. So I feel like he needs a run of games in a settled team where it's Stansfield as a 10 behind him. It's Gray on the left, it's Robertson on the right. And that's an excellent front 4. If those 3 can't create chances for Kyogo, if he keeps missing them, fair enough, you take him out and you put Ducksch in, don't you? But I do feel like Kyogo deserves that chance. And then obviously, once he's had his, you give Ducksch a chance, don't you? But for me, the 4 I would probably most like to watch, from what we've seen so far, are going to be Roberts, Stansfield, Gray, Kyogo.
Right. Okay. I wonder if Chris Davies is even getting sidetracked in this discussion. He will see all of his options. He'll see some of his options playing an hour, some of his options playing half an hour, and those hours and half an hour is being flipped in different games. There's going to be rotation. Being a substitute doesn't necessarily, I think, in Chris Davies' mind, means you're lesser of a player or you're not quite the first choice. I think potentially this is something we're going to have to get our heads round in terms of debating. This is Blues' first 11, and it can only be this, and anything else is inferior. Yeah,
well, maybe the finishers aspect comes in again here, doesn't it? So maybe Kyogo, with all his qualities, his speed and his pressing power, maybe he's better suited to a game when the opponent is tired already. So maybe Ducksch wears them out for an hour and Kyogo then comes on to finish the game, and he'll get chances because naturally later in games, whether, especially if Blues are 1 goal up, the game will become more frantic and, they'll get more chances, won't he? So maybe that's something they can do. Maybe Ducksch is the starter and Kyogo is the finisher. I don't know, but there's so many options there that he's probably not going to need 1 starting quartet. He's probably going to have 6 attackers that he relies on quite heavily, and he just drops them here, in and out occasions. I feel like Gray's probably going to always be in. I feel like Stansfield's probably 90% of the time going to be in as well. I think the others you're just kind of maybe changing around with Kumas, with Ducksch, Kyogo and Roberts.
And we've not even mentioned Kumas. Kumas is the one getting the regular starts at the moment, isn't he?
We've not mentioned Keshi Anderson either. He was one of the first names on the team sheet last season. So options.
I think we're just going to have to get used to selection and rotation. Alex, thank you very much for your time. I want to thank all of you for listening as well and submitting your questions and takes. It's very much appreciated. Makes it much more interesting discussions. It's a big thank you from all of us, and it's a keep right on.